Good evening, and it's an extremely exciting moment for us at Polkadot India to kickstart with you a highly competitive Rust and Bootcamp, Substrate Bootcamp series within the country. So a very big welcome to you all, especially as the very first batch or cohort that will be doing this. And congratulations on picking up this promising technology at such an early stage. It's sure a great move, and we are here with our team of experts and mentors to guide you right through your journey. So now, so please note, we have an exclusive Discord channel going only for developers. So do fill in the form that we'll be sharing with you too in the chat box and stay connected with us. So on that note, it gives me great pleasure to call upon my boss, mentor, friend, and of course, the founder of Polkadot India to kickstart this evening and introduce and welcome you to our first booth. Before that, I think then let me, while Amit joins, let me introduce you to something that we have planned for you in the meanwhile. So throughout this entire boot camp, we have 3 questions planned for you. One will be right now, one will be somewhere in the middle, and one by the end of the event. What you got to do, and this has some interesting giveaways behind it. So we'll be asking you some questions on screen. We'll be showcasing the question on screen. And what you have to do is just type in your answers as fast as you can in the chat box. And the top 3 winners with the right answers go back home with some goodies. So can we have the first question? So guys, time starts now. What all blockchains are developing on Rust? Polkadot, Nia, Solana, Elrond, Nia, Solana, or all of the above?
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with all of you this evening. For those of you who are in India first. And thanks, Ananya, for being the wonderful host that you are. So guys, welcome again to one more event from, this is not really an event, it's more of a bootcamp series that will go on. It's a part of a learning journey. And I want to thank you for being a part of the Polkadot India family. And I would love to learn a little more about you guys. What got you here? How did you learn about Polkadot India? What interests you in Polkadot? Except that, this being a virtual event, all of this is not very easy to accomplish. So if we could just open up, the video and audio for everybody, it'll be great. And let's just get to meet some of the, lovely folks we have with us over here. Team, could you please just invite everybody to have their audios and videos open? So guys, those of you who are open to the idea of coming on camera, please just come by, say hello. Would love to hear a thing or two about you. But in general, for some of the questions that I'm about to ask, you can just click on the reactions tab on your phone or on your mobile, and give a thumbs up over there if you agree. All right. So how many of you are already blockchain developers over here? You can also just raise your hands on chat. You will have that ability. Okay, we have Vineet, Akshat, Jesidus. I hope I pronounced that correct. Did I? Okay, Devendra, Saurav, Dev. Okay, quite a few people there. Jagdish. Lovely to know you all, and thank you for all of you all who have come on video. And how many of you are totally new to blockchain but have a background into programming? Could you raise your hands, please? So the ones who actually raised their hand earlier will have to necessarily keep it down now. All right. So many, Ravi, Hiren, Abhi, Ankit. Okay, Jitendra, and a bunch of people. Prateek, lovely. So welcome everybody. And haven't really built some programs or applications of your own. You are kind of learning programming, and you want to get started with your programming journey, with blockchain and building dApps. How many of you are in that bucket? Anybody who's a student relatively new program, but their hands dirty. A few hands I can see. Om, Yash, Dhruv, Akhil. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So thanks for participating, people. And how many of you will not raise your hands no matter what question I ask? Okay. I guess Jessica, your hand is always up. But Dhruv, thanks for the candidness. I love your DP. It's like pretty badass. So I'd love to share a small intro about myself, about Polkadot India, what we're doing here, what we intend to accomplish as a community over here as well. So my name is Amit Singh. I'm an entrepreneur. I run a company called Viability, product development, reasonably reputed, based out of Bangalore. Bunch of India's startups, their tech products have been built over here. Back in 2018, we built a decentralized storage protocol and for decentralized ecosystems since 2017. I've also co-founded one of India's largest startup communities called Head Start Network. And we've been doing this in a voluntary capacity for nearly 15 years now. And many of India's unicorns have at some point in time made their early stage demo in one of the events that were organized by our organization. So even that's a decentralized community minus the blockchain in it, chapters spread across 30 Indian cities, 4 other countries outside of India. And we've played some role in shaping, some significant role in shaping India's startup ecosystem. Now, I'm personally a strong believer of, the future that decentralized systems overall hold, and how cryptocurrencies and blockchain would really transform and elevate, the status quo that exists in the world today. So it's and towards that effort, we've been, constantly working with teams, building protocols, building decentralized applications for a while. And after a while, we settled down on our own thesis of what would really be the future of blockchain. So in the short term, we can't even call it the short term. So ever since Ethereum got created and some amount of programmability got introduced with blockchains, these blockchains will probably continue to be where majority of applications, stats, etc. are built. In the midterm, layer 2 solutions, like say Polygon, etc., will end up becoming, will end up getting a lot of traffic. But in due course of time, probably layer 1s and layer 2s will develop their own, separate niches, and all of them will probably be scalable. And at that juncture, most of the reasons for which layer 2s exist right now will probably cease to exist, and they will find more unique use cases to solve within their network and ecosystems. And at that juncture, probably layer 0s or interoperable protocols like Cosmos, like Polkadot, will become fairly mainstream. And we are still some time before this becomes a reality. And if that is the future that we're living into, it just makes a lot of sense to build that infrastructure layer up, get as many people as we can to start building on these solutions to accelerate that future. And if that future is inevitable, more or less everybody who's building on Polkadot, who's building on interoperable blockchains, ends up becoming a pretty early player in the game when it comes to blockchain development. And we guys took a bet on Polkadot for a bunch of reasons. Some of them you will get to learn in one of the subsequent talks and sessions today. And what we hope to achieve here is build a thriving community of developers who are interested in building their own decentralized applications or protocols, or people who would want to probably work along with some existing projects. And as and when you grow in this journey and reach a particular level, we'll be more than happy to connect you with a bunch of projects where your skills could match the opportunities and the requirements that they have. We're definitely looking forward to many great projects, in the Polkadot ecosystem coming from India. So Polkadot has these limited number of parachain slots via which, a lot of transactions get recorded into the original Polkadot relay chain. And we would love at least 2 of these parachain slots to be, claimed by Indian companies, with probably tens of thousands of people backing them. So whenever this becomes reality, we look forward to, supporting Indian projects create their crowd loans to raise investment. We also would, loop in our connects and probably, global investor connects into projects that are being built out of India. And in the process, we hope to be able to build an environment in which decentralized application development, protocol development really becomes mainstream. Now, we guys have a very large amount of developer firepower, but very insignificant minority is yet building on blockchain. And that is something that we want to change. So, with thanks to our partners from the Blockchain School and Hack to Skill, as well as Head Start, I want to welcome all of you on this incredible journey of building together. Today, like the age today belongs to builders and marketeers, so to speak, right? So, but if you can code and if you can sell both, then, it's like quite a superpower. So, won't take too much of time, but welcome one more time to, Substrate Saturday, and looking forward to witnessing some awesomeness getting created together over here as a community. Over to you, Ananya.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amit. Glad to be a part of Polkadot India, and this bootcamp series sure starts off many bigger things for the developer base out here. And so now, while you'll hear from the experts soon, let me tell you, blockchains can be very useful for all sorts of things, from improving open access to financial services as a safer way to managing data online. So it can be used to build applications on gaming, supply chain logistics, social media, Internet of Things, and whatnot. So while regulatory bodies and protocol limitations make things difficult for blockchain technology to thrive or to grow at a huge scale in real life use cases, Polkadot solves this by uniting an entire network of diverse blockchains into a single decentralized ecosystem. Right, so maybe a few of us know about this already, maybe a few of us are picking up, but what does it take to be a developer in the middle of all of this? So it is the skill of Rust and Substrate, and that's what we are here for. So that's to give the skilled and desired Indian developer base an edge over many with this focus training. So let's dive right into the agenda of today, and I give you your mentors and the curriculum designers of this bootcamp. That's Varun, Lokesh, and Ritiek, led by the blockchain lead at Wow Labs, of course, Varun Gyanchandani. He's also a brain behind some of the very interesting projects that are coming up in the Indian crypto zone. So over to you, Varun. It's amazing what the team is out here to do, and let's get things going. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ananya. And first and foremost, I would like to welcome each and everyone present here, taking out time on a weekday. So I'll quickly share my screen and we'll jump right into the main thing. Okay, so before we start, who all are already aware of what a blockchain is? You can raise your hand or anything, so that we can gauge the audience that what specific topic and in how much depth we are supposed to go into. So blockchain is basically a distributed ledger, which is a combination of various nodes running on different machines. So each and every machine could be termed as a node, which is running a software in itself, and these nodes are combined together onto a protocol or a platform, which combine them into a single chain. So all of these peers are basically attached in order to append some information into a distributed ledger, right? Now, what is a distributed ledger? A ledger which is actually divided amongst various nodes. so that when people are actually appending, it is not owned by any central body or any centralized system. It is actually owned by people and the nodes which are running that particular ledger. So this particular ledger is based on the transactions. Each and every block comprises of various transactions. So you can only add a new transaction. You can't edit a previous transaction, or you can't edit a current transaction. You can just keep adding multiple transactions into a block. That's the reason the blockchain is an immutable chain where you can keep appending information rather than modifying the information. Okay. Now, these are the overall, this is the overall concept of how a blockchain works. But there are certain issues when it comes to legacy blockchains. So blockchains like before Ethereum 2.0, that is Ethereum 1, and also Bitcoin and Zcash and other blockchains. So they are not interoperable. By interoperability, that means you can't communicate from one chain to another chain or from one DApp to another DApp. So then came a solution which is provided by Polkadot. So over here, Polkadot came up with a concept known as a central chain. They have coined a term known as relay chain. So any specific chain, which is my project or your project or the third project, these all various projects which are potentially going to be part of the ecosystem are known as parachains, because these are the, so you can also call them as parathreads or parachains. There is a difference between the two, which we would explain it to you over the course of the time. But the connectivity between these parachains is actually provided on the shared security and on the central chain, which is the relay chain. So it makes the connection between various applications that are being built on Polkadot in a very easy manner, rather than working on the bridges and the concepts with the other chains. But yes, as you would be aware, a lot of people have already started building up on Ethereum and building the apps on that. So Polkadot has also written bridges for EVM compatibility for those particular dApps to migrate or actually access the Polkadot ecosystem as well into a substrate-based code. This concept of parachains also helps in handling a heavy traffic, because one chain could produce transactions at a certain speed. Another chain could produce transactions at a certain speed. But if all of these chains combined together, parachains, are putting up transactions in a specific speed, so it reflects onto the main relay chain, which is much, much faster in comparison to what our traditional chains have been doing up till now. And the parachains that you're going to build onto the Polkadot ecosystem are basically called as custom-made platforms, because they provide you a framework, which is known as Substrate. In that particular framework, you can modify any runtime logic, any runtime code. Rest, the security, the networking, all of this is actually being taken care by Substrate itself. And because of this functionality of just focusing on runtime, you are able to focus on the forkless upgrades as well onto the Polkadot ecosystem. So coming back to the main point, Polkadot is a next generation blockchain protocol that unites an entire network of purpose-built blockchains, which are actually custom blockchains or user-defined blockchains based on their runtime logics. Now, just for a minute or two, let's try to understand this diagram. What is it trying to say? So this particular silver line that you see over here, this is known as the Polkadot relay chain. Over here that you see, if you are already aware of the Polkadot ecosystem, so on 11th of November, basically Polkadot parachain slot auction started. So this started because people want to get associated to this relay chain, and this small square that you see, this is a slot for which actually people are fighting. Basically projects are fighting or trying to pitch into the relay chain in order to be included into the ecosystem. And this particular triangle that you see, this is going to be a different parachain in comparison to the other parachain. So initially, Polkadot has launched around 100 slots. Scaling would happen probably if all the 100 slots are occupied. But considering with their ecosystem right now, they are just focusing on 100 parachains at the moment. These small pink dot that you see, these are known as collators. These collators basically collect all of your transactions into multiple blocks for your parachain. And these small pink lines that you see, these are known as validators. So these validators are actually associated to the main relay chain. So your collators, which are associated to your parachain, will collect all the transactions at a fast speed and push it. So they do, you can say they do the primary validation for you, but they're not validating the actual information. They're just validating whether it is good enough to add it to the transaction or not, if there is no failure into the network or anything. And then these collators actually push it to the validators. These validators validate the block or the transaction, that what have you written and whether it is good enough or not, in order to push to the main relay chain. So all of these validators are constantly alive. And currently, I believe there are around 300 validators which are live onto the Polkadot relay chain, which they are targeting to be around 1,000 validators towards the end, when all the parachains are live. Then there would be sessions that we would be keeping in order to explain it to you how to become a validator. And then there's a different concept also known as nominator. You can also end up becoming a nominator who is going to propose a validator. So this is just a brief intro on to the much awaited bootcamp that we were planning on Polkadot ecosystem. And I would like to take away any questions if you guys have for me, and then we will jump into the other part. So any questions onto the brief of the Polkadot ecosystem so that we can answer it right away? Otherwise, I will hand it over to my colleague in order to help you understand the basics or the reason behind picking up Rust for this particular bootcamp, and also for developing the solutions on Rust.
Hi Varun, this is Dev here. I have a question.
Yeah, Dev.
So you said that we have main relay chain, and then we have 100 parachains. Between those relay chain and the parachain, we have validators. Correct. And right now we have certain number of validators. I think you said 300, right?
Right.
So X number of validators are there. And then in the diagram, we saw that there was 3 pink lines, which were validators. So my question is, the validator set, which is currently 300, those validator set is validating the transaction like for every parachain, or there are like 3 validators for a single parachain, those are validating the transaction from that certain parachain?
No. So these set of validators are actually distributed in such a manner with the parachain, which are near to region based and also based on the application that they are performing on. Not all 300 validators are going to actually validate the single block which is coming from any specific parachains. They could be distributed across various parachains.
Okay, so that means a specific set of validator will be validating the transaction coming from a specific parachain.
Correct.
But it will be randomized.
Yeah, it would be randomized. Always the set of validators who are going to validate any chain, they are randomized.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So it was actually a nice question. If you guys don't have any other question for now at the moment, so I would hand it over to Lokesh, who can give you a brief about the history of Rust, the benefits of Rust, and why did we start developing on Rust. Over to you, Lokesh.
I think, Varun, before we transfer to Lokesh, there are 2 questions on chat. That's one by Anto that goes, is nominator the same as delegators?
No, nominators are not same as validators. Nominators are people who believe in a particular validator because they could actually stake certain amount in order to nominate a particular validator. And when a validator generates rewards, so even the nominator could get certain rewards as a percentage, the way the validator is getting it. So they both are 2 different things.
Okay, great. And Dhruv says, please correct me if I'm wrong, that using Polkadot, I can run cryptos like Ether and Bitcoin on the same chain.
That is the overall goal of Polkadot as well, by bridging these particular chains together for the interoperability. The bridges haven't been launched yet, but they are working on that code base.
Okay, sure. And finally, I think, Abhilash, why Rust is preferred over any other programming language? I think we'll be coming to that section very soon. I think I'll take one more from Manish that says, does Polkadot support NFTs?
Oh, yes, Polkadot does support NFT. They have their customized palettes known as assets. Under assets palette, you can write NFTs.
Okay, great.
Varun, I have one more question.
Sure.
So, like you said, we have approximately 300 validators, and Polkadot is targeting 100 parachains. So roughly in the randomized manner, 3 validators will be doing a validation for each parachain.
No. I never gave the number that only 3 validators would be actually validating a particular parachain. It could be any number, but it would be amongst those 300 validators, and not all validators would be actually validating a specific parachain. It would be just divided. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I was thinking if it is so small set of group, then how it will be quite difficult to maintain the correctness of the data.
Yeah, so initially, in order to start with, because see, what will happen is, in order to manage the validators also, you need a certain amount of shared memory from the ecosystem as well. That will actually drop down the speed of the chain. So they don't want to compromise on the speed of the chain in order to validate a particular block and the transactions which are going to happen per second. So their TPS is approximately 166.66, which is around 20 times faster than Ethereum at the moment. So if they keep adding more and more validators, it will actually drop down the speed of finalizing the block and also the transactions on the main relay chain. We could definitely, even if you have more questions regarding this, you can ping me separately. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can email me. But we would definitely share some articles with you from Wiki Polkadot. All of your questions regarding this could be answered over there also.
So I'm pretty sure all of you are, one of the reasons why all of you are here is the programming language Rust. And most of you could be here because that is what excites you. And that is why I'm here, to just give a brief about what's the language about, and why do Polkadot use Rust and stuff like that. So before we go ahead, I have the next poll question. So I'm going to share it on my screen, and all of you are free to open and answer at the chat. So yeah, so the question is, Rust has been awarded the most popular language on Stack Overflow since which year? And ever since that year, it's been continuously getting the same award. So kindly go ahead and start answering the question. So moving on. So made Rust. So Rust is a systems programming language that is made by Mozilla. So when I say systems programming, it's not a very well-defined term. Most of you not able to grasp it, right? So what it basically is, it is a programming language that it cares about the runtime. So when I time runtime again, it means the people who want to use this language are worried about where they're executing the code. And it could be one of that, or they're also worried about where they're executing, as well as how fast the systems program is working on. So the performance and execution is a key. So this is where Rust comes into picture, and this is basically what systems programming means. And if you see, Rust has the slogan of fast, reliable, and productive. And these are what like the terms you could say, like probably like quoted as buzzwords that Rust gives us. So what happens is like Rust argues that other languages force you to make a trade-off between any one of these buzzwords. So programs like Python, C++, or C, or Java, or even Go, the new one. So ideally what happens is you do not get all three, but Rust is telling you that you don't have to sacrifice any of these three features. All of these are coming within the Rust ecosystem, which also enables a fearless concurrency. So they are openly going ahead and telling you that you can write concurrent programs, asynchronous programs. So more on fearless concurrency and asynchronous programming later onto the video. But yeah, and the other thing is Rust is primarily community driven, and it as a language, it is essentially a work of a large group of volunteers, and which eventually this entire group got associated with Mozilla. And it also, there are a lot of developers who are willingly committing to the Rust repo. So I'm pretty sure all of you have visited, or you could go and visit the Rust GitHub community, where you could also check out on how you could commit. I mean, you could send a PR and contribute to the Rust ecosystem. So the next thing that I just wanted to give you a brief about is what happens in Rust, like what is the backend of Rust. So Rust is a compiled language. There is no bytecode involved at compilation. So it directly is compiled to a machine level code. And its language has a strong static typing. So no typing occurs at runtime. And all of this is statically checked by the compiler during building the entire executable. The other thing about Rust is it's an imperative programming language. So when I say imperative, most of you must have heard that there are programming languages out there that are purely focused on functional programming. And most of you are familiar with object-oriented programming in your college or at work or whatever. So like, for example, completely functional programming languages are like Haskell, and maybe imperative programming languages are like Java, C, and C++. So Rust is similar with Java, C, and C++, but it has an additional feature that brings in the functional aspects of functional programming into your everyday code. And one of the main features about Rust is there is no garbage collection, and there is no runtime for Rust. So like I said, Rust is a systems level programming, and it can be run even on a system without any OS, because the build file is an executable. Yeah, and Rust is relatively a type-rich language, and so where types are used for enforcing a lot of these guaranteed safety control over your code and make sure it's a very secure and a fast-moving code. So this is mostly what happens at the backend of Rust. So now, just to make it clear for you guys to understand how Rust faces against other programming languages. So to start off, let's start with like Python. So if you see, Python is like, see, the first thing that I would want to point out is why Python is here. Python and Rust are two different programming categories. Python is more of a runtime programming language. So I mean, there is no, Rust has no runtime, and hence there is no overhead. But at the same time, Python, it gets compiled, and there is a C++ compiler for Python, which in turn rewrites all the code that you're doing on Python to build whatever application you're doing it. So you see a much lower memory use in Rust than you do in Python. You also get things like multi-threading. And one of the main features is algebraic data types and pattern matching. These mechanisms, they allow you to write really nice code, even though you are using types for everything. So the types do not get into your way and enable you to do whatever you want to do in your function. So even though you're saying, like you're going to say a static string, explicitly you're initializing the variable, there is an algebraic data type where you can use generics and smart pointers to overcome this part of the issue where you're statically typing the code, but in your function, you want to use any type, and based on that any type, you want to make a computational logic out of it and output, right? So that is mostly about like Python. And so now moving on to most your major comparisons on Rust and other language is C and C++, which often gets called because Rust, you see, is an alternative C into C++ programming. So why is it so popular? In that reason is because in Rust, there are no segfalls. Segfalls was one of the greatest error that C++ has. So what it basically means is if you do not handle your memory, and the ownership for your variables, you could run into very bad errors. And there have been companies, billion-dollar companies that have lost lots of money just because of a segfault error. So there are no segfault errors, there are no buffer overflows, there are no null pointers, there are no data races in Rust. So a lot of this immediately like gives you a lot of control over the applications that you're building, and it's a more secure and it's highly secure and fast performing. So you could never get these errors because all of these are handled at your runtime. So while the compilation is happening itself, the compiler is going to throw you an error if any of these are going to be expected. So that is the main thing. And there is also a powerful type system, which is like, like for example, in C, you have something as void pointers, but you don't have that in Rust, and you don't have to always go and check for your memory and handle the memory dereferencing in C and C++. So in Rust, there is a model of ownership and borrow, so which enables all these functions, and this is how it even gives you the potential to not have a garbage collector, neither a runtime for Rust to be an app that is working. So moving on, Go is a very popular language right now. So I'm pretty sure like most of you guys are like, when you see programming skills, you're like, okay, there is a new language out there, Go, and it's by Google. And so if it's by Google, that means like it's going to be a very popular hit. And Go, to be honest, is a very good language. It's a very good language, and it solves a lot of programming problems that people face when you're writing server-side or microservices architecture. And yeah, there are advantages for Go, but however, you see Go is trying to solve a problem as not a single problem, but they're trying to solve multiple problems at a single time. So and while Rust is trying to give you a better language by removing all that. So one of the main reasons that is because, again, there is no garbage compiler, and Rust uses less memory than a Go programming language, and Rust has no null pointers. And Go, what happens is there are chances where if you do not check for the null, you cannot your program could start panicking. So that is one of the errors that programmers would start facing. So that panic is always bad code. Yeah. So, and moving on, so you also have to make sure that this the dependency system. So we have this cargo manager, right? So all of these cargo managers, I'm going to talk about it in the next few slides. So I'll just move on to the next slide. So far, I hope you guys are liking the comparisons. And yeah, moving on. So this is the part where I hope you guys would start understanding the real features. So which is why I wanted to now think about the actual code in Rust. So what happens, one of the major thing is it's a modern language. Rust is a modern language. What do I mean by that? It has a very efficient generic system along with algebraic data types and patterns. So this is the compatibility with smart pointers, which so even though, like I said before, even though you explicitly initialize variables with types, you can still use these modern programming features to handle whatever function with any type of variable that you need. And it also reduces the amount of memory while you're writing code like this. So that is mostly about that. And then you also have a really modern toolchain that ships with the language. So a lot of these pain points that exist with many other older languages like C and C++ are just gone in Rust. So there are no garbage collection pauses while the application is running. There is no memory overhead, and there is no issue system calls, like when you are forking or executing, and can run on any OS, like I mentioned. And one of the other things are free FFI calls to other languages. So these are mainly to developers. I don't know if you guys are out here in the audience. So main systems core programmers, when you are trying to make a call to another library that is written in another language, say C or C++, if you were to call that library from your C++ code or a Java code, you're going to pay some amount of the performance that your application is going to use. But in Rust, I can guarantee you that you're not going to lose any performance, because all of this FFI, the foreign interface calls, any API calls, whatever you're making, is done at the compile time for the library. You just get the executable that is already built with all the calls that you're required, that's required for your application. So this is one of the major features. And yeah, the other few features are like safety by construction. Like I said, it is pointers are directly checked at compile time. There is no memory for you at runtime. Yeah, there is a concept of heap memory, but yeah, that is an advanced topic which you'll be learning in the upcoming blockchain sessions. But yeah, moving then, and then you have thread safety. So multi-threading is a feature. This safety comes from all the types that you're implementing. So like I said, left and right, you are going to mention and every single variable along with this type. And another point is there are no hidden states. What do I mean by there are no hidden states? Means in a function, if there is a variable that never is undefined, for example, in Java is undefined, in Python you can have null. So there is no such thing. A variable can never be null or undefined. So even if a variable is not returning something, it should return a result type which gives you the actual data that the function is giving, else an error type. And all of this is known at compile time. So this is one of the major points in Rust, like I've been repeating constantly. But yeah, this is the major thing. So this is what I mean by no hidden states. Everything is known to the compiler at compile time. And again, low-level control. So you already know there is Rust provides a control over like allocation of memory and dispatch. So like I said, in the borrow checker always is able to determine when a variable has to be initialized and when it has to be freed from the memory. So all of you should be aware of the memory model. A stack memory model is basically similar to say compare a guy sitting in his office, an accountant sitting in his office with a lot of files in his desk, and he has to go through all of the files to do his thing. So if one of the file is over, it's out of the memory. So this borrow checker in Rust knows when this file has to go onto the table and when it has to be freed from the table. It's never going to return back. So that is what I mean by allocation and dispatch. And you can also write and wrap low-level code. So it's directly you're interacting with machine-level code here. And moving on to compatibility, Rust is a great programming language which supports WebAssembly, and it works with all the traditional libraries and tools that are built for WebAssembly. And the other features are asynchronous code. Asynchronous code is just like fast performing code in Rust. So that is one of the main features why Rust is even used by blockchains. And you can, and like I said, you can run this asynchronous code in different runtimes of your choice. And about the ownership model, like I said, these are most of the points I've already covered, but then again, ownership model is what enables Rust to have its architecture in such a way that you don't need a garbage collector and you don't need a runtime. So all of this is possible by the ownership model. Yeah, moving on, I just wanted to show you a little bit of code snippets on how, when I mentioned that Rust has nice and efficient generics. So if you see this piece of a code, so what you see here is I have defined a struct. So what struct is basically is in your Python or in your JavaScript, you write a class, right? Or Java. This is similar to a class, like you initialize JSON, an object with a key value pair with all the attributes where the key is the name of the attribute and the value is the type of that attribute. That is what you define in a struct. So basically you can think of it as a constructor. And over here, you see, I initialize with the type T. So here, when I say it's a type T, so I don't know, most of you here, how many of you come from a background of Java and C++? Because generics is out there, right? So if you see that part of it, we use T to denote that T can be of any type. I don't want my number to be just a number type. It can be a string type. It can be an array, or it could be an hash map. Any of the type. I'm not particularly worried about it. That is what generic is trying to solve here. So, and these implement blocks, what you see the line IMPL, and I give the type, what type it is, and then I say it's my vector. My vector is the class name or like the name of the struct here, and then I'm writing a function. Similarly, how in an object-oriented programming you're going to write a function that is like, say, an animal class has a sound. So if it's a dog, the sound should be a bark. So similarly, like in a vector, what I'm trying to do is I want to find a particular value that is, and check if that is there in my vector or not. So that is the objective of this. So the vector could be of any type. It could be a vector of numbers, it could be a vector of strings, it could be anything. So this is where the find function. So when you call a find function, it's similar to your class dot, you call the name of the function, right? So if it's a dog dot sound will give you a bark. Similarly, I do my vector dot find to find, and I pass the value that I want to find, and it'll return a Boolean if the value is present. Else it's going to return something called as none, if you see here. So what none here is, like I said, Rust has a concept of advanced enums, which I'm going to show you in the immediate next slide. But what I want you to take away from here is, in the generics point of time, when looking at a point of view from generics, all of this, when implemented in Java and C++, there's a separate layer at compile time for Java and C++ that is written for this particular generic, which means for each generic type that this function is going to intercept, there is a new memory allocated to it. However, in Rust, all of this is handled as a single generic type. This is more to do with how the core of the Rust language is built on. So this is just a takeaway on how generics is implemented. So moving on how you see what is the word here, the keyword option, and I'm returning the type T, right? And what the none is. So let us go to the next slide. So here, like I said, Rust algebraic data types and plus patterns, right? So Rust has the concept of enums. So most of you must have, like in your day-to-day programming languages like Python or JavaScript, and even C++ and Java, you have the concept of enums. And what are enums? Enums are just constants, right? Can you do anything more with enums? Enums are, you just define some constant variables in an enum, right? But however, in Rust gives you an advanced enum feature. These are called where you can actually define some constant to the variable that is inside the enum. For example, like you say, encryption result is an enum here. I have three constants: finished, input error, and output error. But if you see, finished is a constant, but along with the constant, I am passing a key value pair, which is size, which holds a type of U32, which actually is a value that you can pass. So this is where I mean the advanced enum feature that Rust provides. So this feature is unique. There are a few programming languages that I know of is like Scala, Ruby. Python is getting a little bit of it, but yeah, but Rust has this full-blown. The feature is full-blown from the ownership model, and you can use this. And by pattern matching, you can match, you can see this match statement where I'm matching for the enum type. And if you see finished, and in curly brackets, I've written size. So now my size will be a value that when I initialize my enum for any of this constants, that time I would provide the size for a finished if I'm initializing. So that size be a number that I would get it in this function, and I could do whatever I want to do with it. So this is mostly to do with algebraic data types and pattern matching. And like I mentioned in the previous slide, what option is, option has two types. It is an enum, it is an advanced enum that has two types. One is sum, second is none. So if there is no variable at all, it would return none. So that means, you know, at a given point in time, the compiler knows that a variable exists or not. And sum is when the value of the computation is achieved. You've successfully able to compile it and you have a value. That is when a sum returns. Yeah. And moving on, like I said, Rust has a modern tooling manager. So it is a cargo manager. And just a small snippet on how this works is, for example, if you see the attribute here, #test is an attribute macro. This is what you call it, call this in Rust. So when you say that on top of a function, you have a hashtag and test, that means cargo already knows that this function is a unit test case. So when you do cargo test, it will automatically run your test function. You don't have, the cargo will it knows where to pick up this file from in your in your entire code. You don't have to explicitly say that my tests are in this folder or in this file or anything. Cargo will manage it on its own. And another important and something that I personally like as a Rust developer is documentation. If you see, Rust documentation is one of the most clear and elaborate documentations out there. How is this possible? Because they have enabled like cargo in such a way that everything is a structure, is architected. So for example, if you see here, there are 3 forward slashes. And what it means is when you say 3 forward slashes, it means it's part of the documentation. 2 forward slashes is a comment for a code, right? So on any function, if you write any comment with 3 forward slashes, it means it's going to be a part of a documentation. And if you see here, the backticks here, this means this is a code block, right? So inside this code block, I'm doing an assertion. So I say assert equal, and I call the function here one more, and I pass the value 42, and I give the expected value as 43. That means when I do Rust up docs or cargo docs, this documentation will automatically open up in a HTML version for people to read. And while that is happening, this test would get invoked and will check, it'll get into an integration test, and it'll check, make sure that this is passing, right? So that is why documentation in Rust is like very clear. And so you can never write a code that is not working. That is just bullshit. You cannot do that. So you'll always make sure that whatever you're writing, the documentation as well as your test cases are passing at a given point of time. And one major thing, like personally writing a lot of code, I feel is when I do like my test cases, when I want to change, say, a small function in the entire project, and I have missed in another file that I have made changes to a particular function, when I try to do the test, I'll know that, okay, my compiler will not let me execute or even build the program. So you can even do cargo check and it'll throw errors. It'll start complaining to me. I do not like the Rust compiler, to be honest. It's very annoying, but at the same time, I like it because it won't let me write very bad code. So it makes sure that the application is running at any given time. If I can't convince my compiler to build my application, then yeah, you need to start actually working on it, right? So yeah. So all this while I've been talking about maybe all the bright sides of Rust. So there are few drawbacks to Rust as well. Every programming language does. So one of the thing is learning curve. Rust is considered to be a complex language. Why is it complex? It's because of the borrow checker. And second, there is no concept of object-oriented programming. Like I said, it's an imperative programming language which has functional aspects. And there is no runtime. So this is more on the deployment side and where you want to do. So there are no runtime aided debugging. It's all your compiler. Convince your compiler, you will be a good developer, you will build a good app. And another drawback is the compile time. It is very slow, but it's improving steadily. And one other thing is probably Windows. Windows has support for the Rust compiler and even the XTD support. However, when you want to use very low-level libraries for Rust, your application, those libraries are written in mostly C++, in Linux environments. See, there's a simple reason, because most of the developers who are open sourcely contributing to Rust are using Linux environments, right? So when they develop a library, they're deploying it out of the same environment that they're developing in. So which is why Windows has less library support. And this is mostly towards very low-level system programming. Yeah. And to finish off my presentation, I just wanted to tell you guys that Rust long-term viability seems very high. The scope for Rust is just, the potential is immense and it's just rising. And why is it rising? And see, it's being adopted by a lot of companies. The FAANG companies, all of them have already adapted to, started refactoring their backend servers on using the Rust servers. Mozilla, Drawbacks, Cloudflare, Altation, and even NPM package manager. All of you, like, I don't know if web developers are out here. If you're using JavaScript, NPM completely changed their Babel compiler to a Rust compiler. So if you guys are curious about it, please go ahead and Google that. You'll find news on that. And increase company involvement, and every for the past 10 years, ever since it launched, there are world conferences that are happening for Rust and why is it better. And there are being databases even built on Rust, and there are even OSs, Linux OSs built on Rust. So yeah, and I would, all of you who are curious, please go out and check out all of those things. And yeah, so that is mostly coming to the end of my presentation. And installing Rust is a simple thing. You just need to head over to this link over here on the screen, and you have install instructions for whichever OS you are running, Windows, Linux, Mac, any of it. So this is mostly from my end. And if you guys have any questions, please leave it in the comment box below. And yeah, I would like to transfer over to call over Ritiek to take over the next few slides, where you will be seeing some hands-on programming for us. Yeah.
And guys, if you
Ritiek,
have any further questions, you can also join us on Discord again. So you can shoot questions at mentors anytime, even post the event. Yeah. Thanks, Ritiek. Thanks, Lokesh.
Hi, guys. Thank you, Lokesh. So Lokesh talked about why we're using Rust in the first place, how it compares to other languages, the features available, generics, advanced enums, and so many more features provided by Rust. And since the majority of the people in the poll mentioned that they're new to blockchain or they want to start building on Substrate, and as Substrate is built on Rust, so it's important that you guys have a hand-on session on how to write code in Rust. So I'll start off with a very simple hello world program, and then we'll move on to explore other basic concepts of the language. Okay. So I'll also present my screen. Yeah. So this is the basic program, that the first program you usually write in any programming language. So you usually print out hello world onto the standard output. And so we'll try doing the exact same thing using Rust. So the extension of the Rust source files is .rs, and we'll create a new file, and we'll create a new main function. So this is similar to other languages like C and C++. You have the main function, which is the main entry point of the program that you've written. And fn simply means that this is a function. And inside this, I'll write println exclamation mark and then hello world in literals. So you guys might be tempted that this seems like a function, but this is not exactly a function in Rust. How do I know that? Because this thing ends with an exclamation mark. So anything that ends with the exclamation mark in Rust basically makes it a macro. So this println thing is a macro and not a function. And this is what we have. And if we try to execute this code, so what we'll do is that we'll invoke the Rust compiler on this file. And then what this compiler will do is that it will generate a binary file with the same name as the source file. And then we'll simply execute that file. And that works. Okay. And similarly, you can also have variables in your Rust code. This is also very basic concept that comes from other languages as well. And let's say you have a variable called x, and you can assign it any value. So let's say we'll assign it as 10. And so the syntax here is that you have to precede the variable name with the let keyword, and then you assign whatever value you want that variable to have. And in order to print this variable, what we'll do is that we'll have curly braces as the string literals in a println macro. And here we'll pass the variable name. And if we try to run this, this would show us the value. And there is also another thing. So if you worked with C and C++, you know that integers have a size. So they could be like 4 bytes or 8 bytes or whatever. So Rust also has these types, and by default, this is an integer of 4 bytes. You can also explicitly specify what is the type that you want this number to be. And to do that, you can simply have a colon after the variable name and the type. So you have multiple types to choose from. So you have U8. This simply means that this is an unsigned integer of 1 byte. So what comes after the alphabet just basically denotes the number of bytes that this value has. So 8 byte basically means that this is just 1 byte. I mean 8 bits just basically means that this is 1 byte. And so we can actually assign this the maximum value that an unsigned integer can hold, and this works. And if by chance we exceed the value of 1 byte, no, actually, so we'll get an error that this does not fit into the unsigned 1 byte integer type. And also in Rust, you cannot change the value of the variable that you've already defined. So that is a default. So variables in Rust are immutable by default. So if I do something like this, so I'll just make this as 250, and then I'll assign this as, let's say, maybe 150. And that won't work because we already defined that variable once, and we cannot reassign another value to that variable again. So this would fail. In order to do this, in order to make this work, we need to declare this variable as a mutable. So we'll just simply write the keyword mute before the variable name. And if we try to compile this now, this works fine. So this warning is just that we initially defined this as 250 and we did not use that value. So this can be ignored at the moment. But it's pretty cool that the Rust compiler knows that this isn't being used anywhere. And so it warns us. So the next thing we'll be looking at is strings in Rust. And so I'll quickly clean out this code. And let's say we have some variable with the value of, let's say, India. And we can try to print this value similarly to the way we printed the integer variables. And as you can see, it shows India over here. But there is also another catch over here. So when you define string literals into your source code directly, these are readable, I mean read only. So you cannot mutate over this variable. So let's say you want to concatenate the string with some other string, that won't work. In order to make that work, you need to use the string implementation. So we can have something as, let's city, we could say on heap, and we can name this as Polkadot. And to have that string on the heap, you'll have to make use of this built-in string implementation that Rust already provides us. Okay. So what is the difference over here? So when you compile this binary, this string literal is directly stored onto your binary itself. The same case also happens over here, but at the runtime, this value is also moved onto the heap memory. So you can mutate on this string and like concatenate or whatever you want to do. So let's say we want to add something else to this city on heap string. Since this is on the heap, we can mutate over this string. So we can do something like city on heap and push str, and we can have something like India. This fails because we haven't declared this as mutable. So I'll write mute before this. Actually, I also have to change the value over here. So city on heap, we have Polkadot India. So what happened over here is that we appended the string India onto the Polkadot string that we previously had. But if let's say I remove this and I try to push on the string that is a reference, that won't work. So if I do something like this, so you can see this method is not found on str. So basically what is happening over here is that when we define a string literal like this is called an str. And when you have a string like this, you just simply call this as a string. So strings are mutable as they are as they allocate memory on the heap, and these are not, str is not mutable, since this is just being read from the binary file and not being placed on the heap memory. And yeah, similar to other languages, you can also call external functions from the main entry point of the program. So I'll delete this, and let's say we have a function to, let's say, add two numbers. So we can have add, and let's say the variable name is x, and we also, it is mandatory that we also specify the type of the variable over here. So I'll take this as i32 and y also as i32, and will also specify the return type of this function. So it will be an arrow and an i32 as well. And we'll have a variable called result over here that will simply store the values, the sum of both of these numbers, and then we can return this result. So when you in your function, in the end, if you do not have a semicolon and you just simply have the variable name or whatever is your logic over here at the end of the file and at the end of the routine, it would simply return that value. So what would happen in this function is that we'll simply be returned a result from this function. You can also, as an alternative, you can also have return result and a semicolon. That is the same thing, and we'll see that both of those work fine. So we'll directly print the result over here. So we'll have println and curly braces, and let's say we want to add 10 and maybe 15, and yeah, so it shows us 25. So that is the sum of the number. And if I remove the return keyword from here and also the semicolon, the behavior would still stay the same. It still gives me 25. Okay. And as I mentioned, you can have multiple types for your unsigned integers or signed integers. And so the maximum value of value of the number that Rust can hold goes up to like u128 and i128. So if you divide this by 8, it would come out with 16 bytes. So that is the maximum value that Rust can hold for integer types and unsigned integer types. So yeah, and yeah, this is how we work with functions. And so these are the primitive types that we have in Rust. So we have U8, U16, U32, U64, all the way up to U128. And similarly, we also have a usize. So usize is very similar to like having an unsigned integer, but this depends on your architecture, your machine's architecture. So let's say you are running this program on a 32-bit machine. So usize will internally translate to a U32. So that would mean you will be using a 4-byte integer. And similarly, if you run the same program on a 64-bit machine, this usize would translate to a U64. So that means an 8-byte unsigned integer. And similarly, you have the same things with the I8 all the way up to I128. And similarly, you have isize as you have usize, and str and string that we discussed right now. And for characters, you can store like a single character. And in Rust, you have the size of each character as 4 bytes. And all of characters can be casted into a U32, but they cannot be casted back into a character because you're not sure whether the numeric value you have in the U32 can be translated back into a character or not. And most languages also have the Boolean type. So this is just basically a false or a true value. And you also have a tuple. So tuples in Rust can also be heterogeneous. So you can have like a string type and a numeric value in both of them in the same tuple. And arrays and vectors are mostly used as homogeneous. So you'll have the same value type for all the elements that are present in the array or the vector. But you can also make them heterogeneous. That is a little bit advanced concept, and that you'll have to use dynamic pointers and boxes. So that will come at a later stage on how to do that. And similarly, you also have a hash map like most other languages. So in Python, you call it dictionary and you have a key value pair. And there are also a couple of more, like you have results and options in Rust as well. So they'll come at a later point as well. And also you can have conditional logic in, like you have conditional logic in other languages. You can use if and if and else statements in most languages. We'll also quickly go through this. So let's say we wish to make a function that finds out, that takes in two parameters, two numeric values, and gives us the numeric value which is the largest one. So we'll name this as max, and we can keep both of these as i32, and this should be as i32 as well. And here we can simply have an if statement. So we'll have if x greater than y, we'll simply return x, otherwise we'll return y. And if you replace the add function with max over here and try to compile the program again, so we have 15 as the result. So the 15 is the largest value. So 15 is larger than 10, so we have 15 as the answer. And similarly, you can also have else if statements. So you'll write something like this: if the logic is something here. So it will look something like this. But since we are only calculating the maximum value and have two variables, so there's no need to have else if at the moment. So we'll just simply remove this. And you also have three types of loops in Rust. So the first one is the for loop. Actually, I'll quickly copy this code, and I'll demonstrate it to you over here. And you need to have all of the code in your sum. It should be at least in the main function. So you'll have to wrap this around the main function and indent this, close the main function, and we'll try to execute this. Okay. So what is basically happening over here? We have a mutable variable called number, which has the initial value of 1, and we apply a for loop in the range 0 to 5. So we are looping from 0 to 5. So we'll have 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We won't have the 5 number because that is how it works. In Python also, if you apply the range function, you won't get the last value when you are applying the range function and looping over it. Similarly is the case here. And you'll print the value that you're getting from the for loop, and you'll add each of those values to that mutable number. And in the end, we'll just simply print out the number. And if you see the result, so we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which are coming from inside this for loop. And in the end, we are just simply printing out the result that we are summing over here. And if you take a look back at the presentation, so we have covered about the for loops, and similarly you also have while loops in Rust. So you can simply have the condition in the while loop. So you'll have while and whatever your condition is for the loop to break, and then you can just loop would automatically break out when the condition is no longer satisfied. And I don't know if this is visible. Actually, okay. So Rust also has a concept of infinite loop. So this loop that we have over here, this will simply run forever until we break. You can also have a while true over here. So while true condition will always remain true. But the thing over here is that these are specifically optimized in the Rust compiler. So when you just simply have the loop keyword, the Rust compiler knows that this is something special, and it automatically applies optimizations on it. So yeah, so we'll have the same logic over here, and we'll have to check this inside the loop itself. So if the value is greater, or if the value no longer matches the condition, we can simply break out of the loop and print the result over here. Yeah. So that is about the very basics that you can do with Rust and how to write code in Rust. Before I transfer this back to Varun, we also have other question for you guys. So, we probably messed up.
No, it's at the end of your slides. Just go down. So no,
Okay,
go before. Yeah. No.
No, these are the answers. So, okay, I'll just say it, or I'll just write it on the chat box. That would be much better. So, how do I even chat from now?
I think question 3 is on 28. You can share. Yeah.
Now it's there. Yeah, sure. Okay. So the question is, which of these is not a numeric type available in Rust? So you have the options as I32, U64, I4, and U8. So yeah, what do you guys think? Just write it down on the Zoom chat option. Yeah. And yeah, that was all from me. I'll let Varun take over from here, and he'll demonstrate the further concept that Rust has to like showcase you guys. And yeah, that's all from my side. Over to you, Varun.
Great. Thanks, Ritiek. I think guys will take.
Before we start for the next session, I have a question on the presentation that you have seen up till now. I would actually advise if you could respond it on the chat, or however you feel comfortable with, or like raise your hand. So up till now, whatever you understood regarding Rust, do you think it is slightly complex, slightly steep, so that we could cover the next topic in that manner?
Or if you found it understandable, you could mention the same as well. Like, go ahead at the same pace or something like that. Okay, Saurav says nothing too complex. Sure. Almost everybody is asking for more complexity to be introduced. So I think that's a good signal.
Okay, then probably the next session would be slightly interesting, where we would try to cover some of the advanced concepts in Rust, along with whatever you have already seen from Ritiek's presentation. So I believe we can get started in next couple of minutes, till the time you guys can ask a couple of other questions if you have, or else we'll start directly.
I think Abhi has a question. Abhi, you can unmute yourself and ask.
May I, sir?
Oh, yeah. Please go ahead.
Actually, a basic intro about me. I have completed my bachelor's in computer engineering, and I am currently working under training as a full stack engineer at Cognizant. And I am new to blockchain. I fundamentally understand what blockchain is, right? But I have no that experience in either Solidity or Rust or Go. So if it would be better if you can guide from where I can start, or which needs I know basic languages as C, C++, JavaScript, Python also I know somewhat. So I have a computer background and knowledge in computer programming, but new to Web3. So any roadmap, any resources that would help. Actually, I discovered it late. I just joined a couple of days back to the community.
Sure, not a problem. So the way our curriculum is designed, it is not only going to help people who are already well versed with Rust and Substrate, but also people who are picking up blockchain as a concept. So we would share resources with you. We would be doing the boot camps regularly, and we would share a few links with you from where you can ideally start your blockchain learning, along with any specific programming language that you feel comfortable with. We are doing Rust sessions, and we are biased towards Rust. So I would personally say Rust, but in order to understand the basic concepts of blockchain, you can definitely start with Solidity if you want. That should not be a problem.
Okay. Sir, any specific platforms or the resources which are available on the internet would be sufficient to learn?
Yes.
Oh, great.
But so also we would be opening links to our Discord channel. Probably, I believe, are they already open, Ananya, Harsha?
It is. Once they have filled the form for filtration of where they stand, they'll be able to access it, and we'll be live.
So yeah, we would be sharing a lot of resources, a lot of material onto the Discord channel itself. So I would personally advise, if you want to learn some hardcore stuff on blockchain development, so please fill the form and join the Discord channel. And over there, we would provide you all the resources.
Okay, thank
and
you.
all the answers to your questions, whichever we feel could be answered from us.
Sure. That would be great help. Thanks.
I have one more question, but it is not related to like very basic. So like recently the Polkadot crowd loans are going on, and 5 chains already won the slot. And many people had contributed their dot for 98 weeks, which is approximately 2 years. So I was wondering, like, the slot which will be allocated to any chain, suppose Moonbeam or Akala. So what will happen after 2 years? Will they need to again bid for the auction for the slot? How the system works?
Okay. It's an actually interesting question, but the slot that they have received, it's an auction, right? So it is a lease period of 2 years. Right. So they have certain number of dots, some millions of dots that they have reserved with the Polkadot ecosystem, that, okay, we want to rent your place. Okay. So based on that, they have leased it for 2 years. They're utilizing the security, the server and everything, all the validators, and they're just focusing on their application logic. Okay. After 2 years, the Polkadot community, based on the set of validators who have actually given the votes, and the people who have actually given the votes, there would be a final consensus again taken, and also would be checked if the application is performing better into the ecosystem or not. Then this particular call would be taken by the council members. The council members are part of the Polkadot technical team, and also part of the people who are validators, like the people who have been promoted as council members. So based on that, the decision would be taken, but obviously the chain won't go down.
Yeah, hi Varun. So this is Vijay. I wanted to ask you regarding the any blockchain which is built on Substrate, or using the Substrate framework. Are they supposed to go to on Polkadot as a parachain to be part of the relay chain, or they can run independently also? Because not everyone is going to get the slot in the parachain, right? Auctions, and that too also, it is going to be like for a certain period, like 1 year, 2 years. Then after that, someone else is going to win the slot, and then the previous blockchains which are running as a parachain on the relay chain might not get another chance to be using the same slot. So I mean, are they going to run as an independent chain, or I'm a bit confused with the that any blockchain which are going to build on the substrates, are they have to be on the relay chain as acting as a parachain, or they can run independently?
Okay. In order to answer your question, I would take you to some history. So Substrate is basically a framework which has been designed by a team known as Parity Technologies, who are actually the developers of the Polkadot ecosystem, apart from other chains as well. So what Parity decided that, okay, we can lay out a framework which at a certain till a certain point behaves the same for all the different chains, like the security, the networking, and the consensus. All of these actually run hand in hand, and these could be used as direct available code to the developers, so that they could produce this code and include their logic, the business logic, which could be customized as a runtime logic for your chain. So in order to answer your question, yes, you can build your own chain purely using Substrate without being associated to Polkadot as a parachain. That is first part. Secondly, in order to become a parachain, you still have to build it on Substrate. So it is your call whether you want to become a parachain, yes or no, or you just want to build your own chain using Substrate. So
yeah, I got your answer. So another question is that, like, so the advantage of being a parachain or to be part of the Polkadot ecosystem is to be able to communicate cross chain, or is there any other advantage? I mean, other than like why somebody some project wants to be getting a slot in the parachain? I mean, what's the reason behind that? What's the advantage of?
So yes, first thing is interoperability between various chains which are already part of the system or are going to be part of the system. But then there are business calls that the teams take.
Yeah, thanks for answering. Though I have one more doubt. I mean, I just wanted to, yeah. So my one doubt is that, so since we know that like there are 100 slots we have on the, relay chain, and there can be at most 100 projects can come on the, as a parachain on the relay chain. So is this going to be a limitation, or like, say Polkadot or the Substrate ecosystem grows and we have like say 10,000 or many thousands of applications built up and projects running around which are built on Substrate blockchain. In that case, does this limitation only will I mean does this limitation won't allow them to be part of the parachains ecosystem, or this auction system will continue prevailing in the future also, going forward also?
Sure. So first, nothing stops Polkadot, to create more slots. However, the more number of slots there are, the greater amount of time it might take to achieve block finality. So for speed, it is important to have fewer number of these slots per se. However, or fewer number of validators to that extent, or the number of people validating per time. However, scalability of the system could, be nested. Like the same way Polkadot is one relay chain, and there are a bunch of parachains associated with it. You could end up having a parachain itself be of a relay chain architecture. So all of these 100 don't end up becoming, individual parachains. They end up becoming individual ecosystems of related parachains that are talking to each other, right? I do not have a diagram, but I hope that if you're able to visualize it, a single parachain could end up having a relay chain of its own with a bunch of parachains clubbed into it. Nobody stops people from doing that, within Polkadot. And future scalability, if there's so much of demand for something like this, it could definitely end up happening.
Okay, so kind of like multiple relay chains also is going to be, in the which will spawn into this ecosystem, right? Multiple
market will determine this.
Okay.
So literally every slot could become an ecosystem instead of just one parachain. And that single slot is linked to another relay chain, which is a nested relay chain with a bunch of other parachains doing unique activities within that ecosystem, and then transferring off the block to the central Polkadot.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. I was actually trying to help Amit in order to make, I believe it was Vijay, in order to analyze the concept of ecosystem via a parachain itself, but I believe it is already answered.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. So let me just share my screen and let's do some good hands-on session. So, okay, let's minimize this. Okay, all right. So, as we already mentioned that Cargo is a package manager. So either you create a directory without the package manager and then initialize it, or you can, like first and foremost, we'll try to understand what Cargo does. But for that, I'll actually create a directory, maybe as Rust example. Okay, then let's. Okay, now in order to make this particular project or a folder of yours to be Cargo initialized, we can do Cargo init. That would include the Cargo binary into this. Okay, this way, the moment you do, like the way you do your yarn build or yarn start, similarly, you can do your Cargo build in order to download packages which are required, which are being provided by Cargo, which are actually open source and freely available. Pre-compiled codes or pre-compiled packages written in Rust to be downloaded for you, where you can utilize them into your logic. Okay, so let me just go to this and okay. So this is like a fresh project that we have started, and the moment you initialize your project with Cargo, so you can see it downloads, it creates a file known as cargo.toml. Over here, you can mention your dependencies, whichever dependencies you want to use for your project. Okay. The name is basically the name of your package or the project that you are going to run with Cargo. we named our directory as Rust example, so it takes that particular Rust example. This is the first version of your package that you are mentioning. And this edition that you see, this is the Rust edition, which is the current edition. Before this, it used to be 2018, and now it has been moved to 2021. Okay. And as Ritiek has already covered for you, that the basic function, which is the main function, which utilizes the print line macro with hello world. So we would actually do one thing. We'll try to compile this first. Okay. So as you see that it took just a fraction of a second to compile this code. Now let's say I have a dependency which I want to download. I just want to show you the overall feel. How does it work? Okay. Okay. So there is a link known as crates.io where you already have pre-compiled packages. For example, we are currently writing a package. The moment I compile this package and I upload it over here, anybody can utilize that particular package to include as a dependency for their project. So now what we are doing is there is already a package, let's say num, so this is the version number that I was mentioning you, 0.1.0 for our package. This particular version is the current version of the num crate. So we'll copy this and we'll just paste it over here. Now when I do cargo build, okay, or cargo run, so you will see that it will start downloading certain packages which are linked to this particular package. So you see, this is compiling with these various traits, integer, num begin, num iter, num rational, and then compiling this overall package. So now you have already installed the dependencies which are corresponding to this particular package. Okay, so let's actually do one thing. Since basic primitive types are already covered, so let's actually walk through step by step. I'll actually name my file as step 1 itself. Okay, so now when you create a particular file, okay, this file is nothing but this is your module which you could utilize into your main file. So I would actually go ahead and write my one over here so that it gets included. Okay, now apart from primitive types, if you remember, Lokesh would have already covered something known as structs, where he was trying to explain a generic kind of a struct. So a struct is basically a class which you create. In Python, you create a class. Over here, you create a struct. So we would go ahead and create a struct, and let's name it as balance module. And why am I writing it as balance module? Since we all are here understanding not only the concepts of Rust, but also understanding the concepts of blockchain. So blockchain, basically, a lot of people understand as transactions. So even we would try to demonstrate something in a very low level, just at a higher level, in order to make a transfer from one particular kind of an account to any other account and see the balance, how much do they have, and query that balance, and probably set the balance also. By the way, that set balance would be a backdoor because nothing is minted yet or nothing is at the genesis yet. So we would give certain tokens or certain amount to every specific account. Now, coming back to this, so this you have created a class or a struct. Now, every struct is actually defined with a field. Now, I am creating a field which could be a hash map type and which would take two primitive types, you can say U32 type. Now, this is the key and the value. Now, you can see, because I already have the Rust analyzer installed into my system, you can also install it. It'll start throwing you errors, whichever you, like the moment you are just writing your code. So over here, it says that you don't have hash map in this scope. So that means we need to install this dependency. So STD is basically the library that comes directly while you are installing Rust. So you have STD collections and then hash map. So hash map is nothing but a struct. The way we are writing our own struct, hash map is also a struct which has certain types defined for it, and also the functions defined for it, which we would be utilizing as we go ahead. Okay. So actually, let me just demonstrate that right away. So let's come to our main.rs. And okay, now in order to utilize that particular struct that we have over here, because see what will happen is it's always better to keep your code structured in different files based on the logic they are performing, and then utilize the one which is required into the main file. Okay, so let me just actually create an instance of, so the way we so the way we wrote std collections hash map in order to use that particular struct inside this. Similarly, we are writing the same. Step one is basically my module, and this is the kind of struct that I want to utilize. So, okay, people from Python background would be able to understand it very, very easily. This is a class, and this is an object that you are initiating for this particular class. Now, when you are initiating an object, you need to define whatever is part of the class. So over here, when we come, so this had a field balance. Now my balance is basically a hash map type. Okay. And I want to initialize it. So I created a hash map new again. So it will throw an error because it needs the dependency. Okay. So because if you would think that I have to do it again and again, yes, because it works in such a manner that it has to be in the scope where you're utilizing any struct or any package. So now we brought it into the scope, so there is no error. And when you're ending the let statement, which is an assignment, basically you're creating a variable. So over here, we have created an object of the balance module type. So we ended with semicolon over here. So now I don't think there should be an error, but balance mode. Okay, so yeah, there is one more error. Okay, so what is that error trying to say? That the balance field that you have, now you're trying to use it in a different file, but you have still kept it private. So it's better if you can actually provide it a public word. So now you can actually use this particular balances in order to either set the balance or get the balance. But without actually writing a function for balance module, how are we going to do that? We are going to do that in such a manner because now we are using this particular struct type. So this particular struct, which is hash map, provides a lot of functions which we are going to utilize now. So my balance is, which is my object. So under this object, I have a field balance. So in this balance, I am going to utilize the functions which are provided for this specific struct. So this specific struct provides me insert type. So the moment you did insert, it pops you a definition of an insert, that this insert takes a mutable self. Now over here, your mutable self is basically your balances. Okay, this particular field. Okay, and then it is asking for a key and value. Now I gave the key as 1 and my value to be 100. Okay, so why directly passing it value as 1 and 100 over here? Because we have already given these as U32 types. We would jump to generics later where we would be not defining the types like this. It would be a better way, but we would actually progress into that over the period of time. Okay, the moment you do this, now in order to get the balance, you can do one thing that actually print it using the macro. Okay. Guys, do let me know if I'm going too fast or if there are any questions up till now. After this print line macro, I would take up any questions if you have. Okay. So now in order to get the balance, so you did this. Now the get is another function which is already provided for hash map type. So when you do get, it automatically tells you, okay, let me just minimize this. So this gives you that it is going to take a reference of self, and along with that, it is going to take a key, which is a reference. Now, and over here that you see, that is basically a pointer, or you can say a reference to that specific type. So it is kind of a helper. Now, the moment you did this get 1, okay, have I closed it well enough? Okay. All right. So this get is going to return an option type. Now, when we say option, so we explained it to you earlier that there are a couple of enum types predefined in Rust. One is an option type and the other one is a result type. We would be covering both of these, but since we are trying to get the value, so I'm trying to explain it to you like how to understand the code firstly. So when you did get, which returns an option type, now this option basically has two variants. It has two types in itself. One is sum and the other one is none. If sum of the value of this key is actually present into this storage, then give me the result out of it. Sum of that value. Now, why am I saying sum again and again? Let me actually build the project. So you see, it returns you sum 100. It is not exactly giving you the value, but it is giving you the reference via that particular option. Now, in order to actually get the value, so there is another type function which is provided by Rust, which is unwrap. What unwrap does is for any specific type of option that you have, it returns that contained value of that sum. So over here, it passed that sum value, it unwraps over here. Now unwrapping is like you're removing that sum and you're actually accessing that value. So the moment you did this, ideally it should give you 100, but let's try. So this is how it actually you were able to create a particular object of your class, which is a struct. You created a hash map. You passed, you inserted the key and value into that hash map using the functions which are coming directly from this particular struct. Okay. Now there would be a lot of questions in order to understand. Okay, if I don't want to utilize these kind of functions from a different struct, how can I create my own functions? We are going to go next to that only. So we would be implementing our own type, where you would be utilizing this type into traits. Okay, am I going too fast into traits? I believe. Okay. So let's do one thing now. Rust provides a keyword known as impl. It is basically in order to implement any particular type in your way. So let's actually do that. And so when I say implement balance module, now I'm going to implement this particular struct with few functions so that whenever I want to call my particular struct, I could directly call those functions rather than being dependent on any other traits or any other functions. But the more and more code you write, it would get slightly tricky for you to just keep writing your types and your functions. So that's the reason you would end up utilizing already pre-compiled types and structs and traits in order to utilize in your code. Okay, so the concept is very similar. The way we created a new function, like we instantiated a new balances using a hash map new, we would actually create a function pub new. Okay, I'm trying to cover as much as possible with explanation. I'm going to explain the use of self as well, that why are we using self. I'll make it easy for everybody to understand. Okay. Now, what we did over here, we created a function new. The way HashMap has created a function new in order to instantiate something, right, of for that particular type. Now we are creating our own new function. This is basically a constructor, you can say, which is going to return a self type. Now, what is a self type over here? This self type is basically your struct, because you are implementing this particular struct. So now you are saying whatever the name is, I don't have to worry about the name or the type of struct. I just want to pass it as a self. I want to return that particular struct itself. Okay. Now, in order to return that particular struct itself, now you are passing that my struct has a field balance. So I'm going to instantiate that particular, I'm going to define that particular field with this particular struct that create a new for this particular balance. Okay, it is quite similar to what we have already done, but let me actually do one thing. Let me comment this code actually. Okay, so Okay. So you see, I called that particular module from that particular struct, and now I'm calling the function that we have already written for that struct. So the moment you do this, now your balance is already initialized with that particular hash map type. Okay. So now if you want, you can directly do balances dot balance, because the name of the field for that struct is balance. Now over here, you can insert directly your key and your value, which is 100. So it is quite similar to what you did, but you created a different object of this. That part we have already covered over here now. So whenever you want to call this particular struct's new function, you want to initiate it, you directly call that function, balance module new. So it becomes quite similar to what you've already done with hash map new. Okay. Let's actually, okay, if you guys want to see, okay, you won't be able to see anything, but it will just compile the code because we are not doing any print line macro over here. Going forward, what we are going to do is whatever code we are writing over here, instead of just checking it on main, we would also understand writing the test cases for all of these going forward, right? So the way Rust works is the moment you write any particular function with an attribute like hash test. So, okay, I'll explain 1 second. So let's actually do test step 1. Okay, it is just a normal function that you have done. And let me actually copy this line. So you are initiating this. Now you can ignore the main function. Do not worry about the main function. I'll explain why. Because now going forward, we will just test all of the functions, whether whatever we are passing, it is working or not. Okay. So you created the same variable over the same object over here for your struct. And let me just copy this line as well. Okay. Okay. Now let's assert whether my balances.balance.get key, which is 1, has 100 as balance or not. Okay, why is it throwing error? Consider borrowing here. Yeah. So get basically takes a reference type, which is and is a reference to that particular key. Over here, when we are passing the key, so we are actually saying that I'm going to give you a reference to that rather than giving the actual key, so that you can give me the value. Okay. Okay. Am I missing something over here? On type integer. Okay. Option expected enum. Okay. So got it. Okay, am I missing something? Where is it giving the error on? Okay, so mismatch type is expected. Yeah, by the way, since we are doing live hands-on coding, so obviously we would run into some errors and we will try to resolve them on our own. Before you guys start screaming at me, so I would actually go like to debug the errors that we are facing. Okay.
It's happening probably because the get method returns an option on hash map.
Yeah, so get returns an option, and we have given the and U32 type. So
we probably need to unwrap this.
No. Okay, so have I returned? No. My bad. Really, my bad, guys. So we don't need the from date cannot be used if the data is implemented and in scope. So in order to get the balances, okay, I don't think this unwrap is required over here. I'm missing something, I believe. So Okay, no, this is fine. So for your balances type, okay, let me just rewrite it again. It is not able to find get. Okay. Returns an option of type. Okay, dot unwrap equal to 100. Now I should think, oh, am I missing something here?
Assert comma, there's no equal to. It's as unwrap comma 100.
Sorry.
Unwrap comma 100. No equal.
Oh, my bad. Really sorry, guys. Really sorry. Because we are testing the value. So we would need in order to check the value with assert. No, okay, do I need to close anything here? I don't know if I'm missing something or not.
You can do assert underscore EQ. Assert underscore EQ.
Both the functions
EQ and then replace the equal to with comma.
No, but it is throwing an error for the option type actually, which is the partial actual error occurred here. State corrections hash map.
Maybe we can try dereferencing it. Yes.
Dereferencing for assert won't be required. Dereferencing for assert won't be required.
Probably try doing 100.into.
100.into. What for?
It's complaining that it cannot, it does not have partial equation state implemented.
Check it. Let me do one thing. Let me do a better thing actually. It's okay. I believe we could fix it in a better style by writing our own function for this. So function balance. So in order to, okay. Sorry for that confusion, guys. So let's actually do one thing. We'll write our own functions rather than if that particular function, the get is throwing any error type. So before we go ahead, we would try to set a balance of, so when I say and mute self, now what we are going to do is we are going to take a self type, which is our balance module itself. And we are going to mutate the value of it because we are trying to set the balance. So this could be a backdoor function where you would be trying to set the balance of any specific account and by what amount. So which you could be having amount as your 32. Now, when you do self, so this is your the field that you're going to pass. So self dot balance. So this is the exact field that you're getting for this self type. So self dot balance dot insert the one which we used as the key. Key is going to be who over here, the one which we have created, which we are taking from as a parameter. And the value is going to be amount, I believe. What have I named? I have named amount itself. I have named amount itself, correct. So over here, when we do balances.balance, so we can also do one more thing. Balances dot balance dot balances dot set balance. So when we are doing set balance, we are setting the balance for 1 and 100. Okay, so is it working correct up till now? So why did we actually start writing it as a test? So that whenever you do cargo test, you are able to see whether the test is actually, whatever the logic you have written is performing the way it is supposed to perform. So as you can see, cargo by default, that's the reason we actually annotated this particular function type with a hash test as an attribute to check whether this particular test will pass or not. We would come back to this assert in a while. We'll write our own function in order to assert the value. Okay, so after setting the balance, let's actually do function, let's make it get balance. So now when you're trying to do get balance, so now there is a difference between mute self and self. Self and mute self. So mute self is because you are trying to mutate the value of or change the value of your struct for that particular field. Over here, you are just trying to get from the storage. So you don't need to mutate that particular value. Okay. So you want to get the value of who account, which could be a U32 type. And this should ideally return you a value, which is again a U32 type. So the moment you do the self dot balance dot get over here, which is and who dot unwrap or okay. So I believe I have an answer to our question regarding why it was not behaving the way it was supposed to. So when you say unwrap or, so it would ask you for a default value. If in case when you're trying to get the balance, please focus on what I'm trying to explain on this. When you're trying to get the balance of a particular account ID which you're passing, if it doesn't exist in the storage yet, so it should not panic. It should give you some value, or it should give you a default value. So for example, for account, we have created an account ID 1. We don't have any account ID as 2 yet. But if I want to look for the balance of account ID which is 2, it would panic. So it's better if we return a default value saying that, okay, if it doesn't have anything, it is going to return a 0. Okay. Okay. Now you need to, I believe, dereference this particular borrow. This should work, right? Okay, now a few people might have questioned that what are we trying to do with this star? So this is basically a dereference to the because we want the value now, right? So you were referring to a particular value which in return would give you any specific result type. Now, option type. Okay. Now, in order to get the value of that and stored into your getBalance function, so you do the dereference of that specific type to give you the exact value. Okay. Now let me come to this in order to insert one more value, probably set balance 2. Okay. And make it 200. Okay. Okay. Now let's try to assert my balances dot get balance of who, and let me do it 100. Don't throw any error, please. Oh, thank you God so much, because we wrote our own function. So probably it was, although if you can see, we have done almost the same thing over there in our function. Like we were doing balances.balance.get, that particular type, unwrap or and 0. And over here we did the unwrap. Okay, could have been fixed using unwrap or, but okay. Life of a developer. So, okay. So let's actually do balances.getBalance of account ID 2. Now let me pass a false value over here. Let it be the value as 50. As you can see, we have already tried to set the balance to be 200. But when we are doing the exact match, we are asking that is it equal to 50? Now, when you do cargo test, it should ideally fail. So these are the kind of unit test cases usually developers write. So you can follow the same approach, or few people actually test it using main function. But personally, I wouldn't suggest that. It's better if you could always write test cases for various functions and the types that you are trying to check it against. Now you'll see that this particular test has failed because over here the value is not matching. But the moment I make this value to be 200, now it should pass. Okay, congratulations, our first test case has been passed. So what we did over here up till now was we created a struct. We are implementing few of the functions for this struct. We are calling that particular module over here, and we are testing by setting the balance. So as I said, this set balance is basically a backdoor for setting the balance from the backend itself, which could be done via the front end later. But this is the overall idea of setting the balance. Now, what is the use of understanding the concepts of blockchain or utilizing balance if you're not going to transfer the balance from one particular account to any other account? Okay. So, okay, before we jump into that, any questions up till now? Do we have people or have already left looking at? Okay.
That was such a key question.
Yeah, I thought maybe people were like, okay, what is he doing?
So, hi, Varun. This is Vijay. I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So this question is regarding the previous implementation of hash map that you did, so where you, you were using the new function of hash map, which is a inbuilt, I guess, the inbuilt method of the hash map defined within the hash map struct, right? So I saw you implemented, you did implemented that new method again, like calling a user defined method. So can we call that as an override? Can we relate that as a overriding thing, the way we do in Java or C#, like, we override some similar kind of methods which are already defined, something like that?
So yes, you can say that we are doing the same concept of overriding over here itself, but we are just creating a constructor by calling this new for this particular struct. If you don't want to do this, you can actually directly do the way I did earlier while I was trying to explain it to you for calling a new function from the main type itself. But this basically makes your code slightly structured when you are implementing any kind of a type. So as I said, when you're implementing any specific struct or a class in Python, so you are implementing that with a specific given type, or you can create your own types. So over here, we created our own function in order to utilize that same function. Yes, we are overriding that, agreed. This is just in order to make it slightly more structured and developer friendly.
All right, cool, thanks.
Yeah. We would go in detail in traits also if we have enough time and if I don't make much of the mistakes while doing my hands-on. If we have good enough time and if everybody is actually interested, we would try to implement a trait as well. If not, then at least I'll try to cover the concept of generics. We will see how it goes based on the time. If everybody is available and interested to learn more, so I would definitely take the session.
I'm interested.
Lovely. So any other question, guys? No. So then, okay.
Yeah, probably Varun, I have one question. Maybe
yeah, sure.
All of them. Like probably, can anybody share what you feel about the code structure so far you've seen at Varun's implementation of how he's implemented a struct and functions for the same? Are you able to relate? And if so, like how?
Yes, I can relate in a few of the things since I come from like C# and that kind of background. So a few things which I could relate. So whenever I see new language, so I always try to relate what I have already learned, right? So how can I replace what I've done and what are the things which are similar to what I've done already, So for example, like struct over here, so struct and implementation of struct is something was new, but there's a like a concept of interface implementation in other languages, like where you define certain blocks and then you implement into classes, right? You implement all the methods. But over here it's a little different, where you are implementing the struct and their types within in a new module, and like kind of new module. So yeah, I believe, I mean, that's the kind of relation you can derive from a kind of implementation you do in other languages than you do in here, like implementing traits. I think maybe it's some kind of similar thing.
Traits, you can basically assume like the Rust personal tool of providing abstraction, right? So that whatever is happening underneath a particular trait, nobody needs to know, like to the outside world. So for example, when we are, I will go much more in detail regarding traits, but this is just an overview, and probably a higher level definition that it is purely like an abstraction, the way you have concepts in C++ and probably templates that people write. It is quite similar to that, but Rust has its own name as trait.
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe, so still in case you guys have any questions regarding the code or whatever, so please feel free to ask in the chat, because I'm sorry, I can't keep checking the chat again and again, but I would definitely stop myself after each and every function so that we could make it more interactive and understand if there is any blockage in understanding. Cool. So then let's create one more function as the main function, because if you don't write a transfer of balance, then you are not actually implementing the concept of blockchain, right? You need to transfer something to the other person, right? So when you do this, so now when you are actually transferring, so you need to create a mutable self for that type as well, because obviously you are going to change the values of balance. So okay, so let me actually name it directly from U32 to, which is again of type U32, and the amount, which is again of type U32. Okay, I'm going to write a small line, hoping that everybody would try to understand. If not, then I would straight jump into this and try to explain. Okay. Okay. So if anybody comes from a Rust background, they would already understand that what I'm trying to do over here. If not, then I'll explain it right away, along with implementing this particular part. So over here to the function, I'm saying that I'm going to return a result type, which has two particular variants. One is an OK variant and the other one is an error variant. Okay. So when I'm returning this particular type, which is result, return me an empty value, which is okay. Whatever the value is, if there is no value, it's fine. Then you return a particular error. But what I've done over here, I'm not actually passing an error. I'm actually saying that while writing the code, or while if there's no okay value returned, then you return me a string for that, rather than just an error. That return me a string saying that, okay, what was the error and why didn't it return any particular value? So this is what string is trying to do. So and is basically a reference to that particular type of a string, and static is so this is one of the key notion, you can say, or the way of writing a lifetime. So okay, this apostrophe that you see over here, this is basically a lifetime. That in this scope, whatever static string that you find, pass it as a error value for that implementation of the result type. Okay, you will understand much in detail while I start writing the code. So let me do one thing. Let's create a couple of variables as from balance. So my from balance is basically a self, which takes a balance and get that particular from and dot okay. Or now, if I would not have written this result type, I would not have passed actually this okay or. So because this, as I said, this result is having two variants like okay and error. And when I'm actually getting the value, which is an option type from this get, you need to check whether this particular value that you have received, does it have any value? If yes, then okay. If not, then I'm passing a string, which is this particular error type. And this particular could be from does not have enough funds, maybe. Okay. Okay. Should not throw any error. Okay, perfect. Okay. Now, similarly, let's create new balance, because we need the new balance as well, which is the new, sorry, to balance, it should be. We would have new later. So, okay. So your to balance would also be of the same style, like you're trying to get the balance of this particular account type, which is and2, okay, dot, okay, or and my error is to balance does not exist. Maybe if the account does not exist. Okay, so cool. All right, no errors. Good. I'm learning now. Okay. Now the whole idea of transfer is that you receive the balance from this particular account, and you also receive the balance from this particular account. Now we need to change the value of this particular accounts. Okay. So now my new from balance could be actually, okay, from balance. Okay. I could actually directly add the values, but let's try to make it more complex by checking whether there is going to be any error or whether it is going to have an overflow or an underflow of value. Now, I would jump to that in a while. So Rust provides your checked add. So when you're checking the add, you want to add the amount. Okay. Should not throw an error, or probably, okay, or because even that would return a type, but checked add should take my, okay, here's the current scope in no fixes available. Okay, so this should actually have, because this is going to match. So, okay, I would explain why am I adding question mark in a while. Okay, or maybe user does not exist, whatever the value is. Okay, don't throw error. Okay, good. Okay, and my to balance dot, actually I should be checking subtraction over here rather than checking addition, because I need to subtract the balance. Yeah, right. What am I doing? Okay, so balance dot checked add over here. I would be checking the amount that is supposed to be added dot, okay, or now the in order to, okay, let's actually write it as overflow. Okay, that should work. Okay, and then whatever value we have received, let me actually do one thing. So balance dot insert into my balance type. Now, okay, now we are updating our storage over here by calling self balance insert for this particular value. Now my from account would have a new balance because the transfer has already happened, right? So we would be putting it in new from balance, and similarly self dot balance dot insert should be 2 and 2 new balance. Sorry, new to balance. That is the name of our variable, right? And over here we would be returning an okay type, which is even if it doesn't return anything. Oh, beautiful! We just wrote a transfer function without any errors. Cool. So I would come to our this particular thing, and now we have already checked these two functions, whether they are functioning right or not, by setting the balance and getting the balance. Let me actually do balances dot transfer. Now we are trying to transfer from 1. Okay, where is it? To 2, and the amount that I'm going to transfer is, let's say, 50. Okay, because it has 100 and now this is 200, so now we can transfer 50. So yeah, assert. Now, ideally, let's actually check. So this particular account, which is account 2, after the transfer should have amount as 250, right? So let me actually call that balances.getBalance over here. Now we are utilizing our function. That's why I told you, when you're implementing a struct, you can play around the way you want to by utilizing your functions. So the moment you do get balance, now I want to get the balance of 2. Is it equivalent to 250? Let's see. Okay, let's actually see. Okay, test. Yes, perfect. So your result is passed. It is equivalent to 250. And the moment if I do it 200, you will see that the test won't pass because it is not matching to the value. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I mean, all the test cases are passed, and this is one of the implementations of your entire struct on, like, you were able to set the balance, you were able to get the balance, and you were able to transfer the balance. Okay, so before we go into at a deeper level now, okay, what we did over here was we actually, you can say we have cheated a lot. I'll be very, very frank. We are passing the value, which is why Rust is very type friendly, because we need to provide a type in a generic style. You know, when I say in a generic style, if I have to make change to this particular type, I'll have to change it at all the instances, right? I have to change it from U32 over here to U32 over here to U32 over here. So it's better if we write our code in a more systematic and better way. Okay, before I go into that part, do you have any questions up till now, till this particular point? Or you want to see the... I like to see the pass. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, any questions up to this part?
So Vijay says if you can explain the transfer code again.
Oh yes, sorry, my bad. So yeah. Okay, so what we did over here was we said that, okay, for this particular type, we are taking these 3 parameters, which is from, to, and amount. And I want you to help me return result type. Actually, you know what we can do is I wrote this as, because I don't want any value to be returned back to me. I am okay with whatever the transfer is happening. But in case if you want to return a value, let's make this also U32. Okay, let's say. So over here, it would throw an error. So over here, you can actually ask, okay, so whatever the value has been transferred, I want to find the value of this particular account, which is new to balance. So the moment I did this, then I'll have to write it in my main function actually. So let me do balances dot get balance of 2, right? Okay. And oh, sorry, my bad. What am I doing? Okay, sure. Now when I do my cargo run, okay, sorry, I haven't set the balance. This was the test function. So let me actually set the balance first. Okay, yeah. Now I should get the balance. Yeah, see, okay, sorry, I wrote it that for the transfer function. We are trying to test the result for transfer function actually. So balances dot transfer from 1 to 2, and the amount will be 50. Now this should give you that particular, okay, but you need to test the results. Let result is equal to balances dot transfer. Now, if I print this particular result, okay, this should give me new to balance, because that is what we are asking for us it to return to us, right? When we passed okay, so we said okay, new to balance. So give me that particular value now. Okay, so you received okay, 250. And the way we did our unwrap earlier to get the exact value, so you can do your unwrap in order to get the exact value. It would give you the exact value of that particular type. So coming back to this particular part, so because earlier when I wrote the transfer function, I was not interested to find the actual value. For me, I wanted it like to just transfer the funds rather than getting the actual value, because the value when I want to get from this particular function, and I call this, right? So when I did this result, now I'll actually make it. Yeah, any questions onto this U32 part? So I'll actually make it a null type itself. I don't want the value. Let it be an OK type or nothing. Cool. And so as I said, that this particular get function returns an option type, option of this and like a reference to this particular account in order to get you some value of that. Now, when you are getting some value of that, so in order to pass it as a result type, so because result requires an OK error type. So you are saying that OK error, OK, if the value is OK, give me this value. If you don't have a from account in this yet, so then, sorry, if you are not getting any particular balance from account, then return an error, which is going to be from does not have enough funds. Similarly, we have done rest of these things in order to check. And this is in order to check for your balance, whether it could be if this value is big enough in comparison to this particular value. So I didn't, like I wanted to check, then I would have to write if else conditions. So this check sub is basically a function which is directly provided in order to check if the value are on the left hand side is greater than the value on the right hand side. Similarly, in order to check add, this particular value which is on the left hand side, can this be added, which is of a U32 type, or it will overflow the particular field type of U32. So in order, if there is no overflow, then return the value. If there is an overflow, then you say that, okay, whatever funds you're trying to transfer and add to this particular account, it has overflown the kind of the type has been implemented for this. Okay. I'm sorry, my battery is being discharged. Cool. Cool. Questions? Should I move to the next step where we make it one step forward to making it generics? Just one step. We won't jump directly into generics yet. We just take one step by step.
Varun, it'll also help if you could share, hard stop, because we far exceeded the time that we had initially planned for the session. And for at least some, it might be relevant to know because they might be curious and engaged at this juncture, but still it always helps to know what the stop time is approximately.
Okay, I'll be frank, Amit. I don't know the stop time because I can go on about explaining each and every concept, but I understand. But is it okay if we can take a poll with the audience right away if they are ready till 9 or if they can stay? If not, then we'll probably close it in next 10-15 minutes.
Yeah. So rather we can declare the session complete. There's enough that probably those of you who've been there so far and people who even left, they would have gotten. And now it's like a free run for those of you who want to stay on. Let's continue till 9.
Sure.
Yeah, cool. You guys can drop anytime and please feel free to, say any final words before leaving. We, of course, wanted to take a couple of polls, but we'll figure out a better opportunity to take your feedback on the session. Do feel free to share that with us and our team via whichever medium you are in touch with us, either Telegram, WhatsApp, or subsequently on Discord. Over to you again, Varun.
Sure. So now let's take one step forward just one step in order to make it understand how do we make this particular account. Sorry, let's actually do it. So
Varun, I'll just pause you for a second for those of you who are leaving us now. So we shall be sharing an assignment with you on the Discord channel by the end of this week. And this is going to have a 1-week submission time limit. So do join the Discord channel and watch out for the assignment. That's for all of you who's ambitious and curious to do more. So do pitch into the assignment. Sure, Varun, over to you.
Okay, so
and Varun, check out Vijay's chat message on putting this code on GitHub, just so that people can reference it while they're working on stuff.
Sure. That is the whole idea. Whatever you are seeing live over here, I would complete the code, probably not complete the code till whatever point we have done. We would share it on a GitHub repo. We'll share the link with you. If you have any comments on that, you can raise a PR and we can take a chat over there or onto the Discord channels itself. Cool. So without putting in too much of time into this, let me actually take one step forward. I'll just copy this because I don't want to take too much of time in order to write the code again. So let me actually paste that particular file over here and rename it to step 2. Okay, we already have the code over here. Now, when I said in order to take one step forward in order to understand the types, so let me actually create an account ID, which is a U32 type. Okay, and create a balance, which is also a U32 type. This implementation would ideally take 2 to 3 minutes if you guys can stay for this, so you would be able to understand that what I'm trying to do. So wherever you see U32 types, so I'll just copy this account ID and we'll just make this. Okay. Okay, and my balance set balance. So who is going to be my ID type, and my amount is going to be a balance. And similarly, this is going to be the account ID type, and this is going to be my balance. Okay, perfect. And similarly, just copy this from here. Perfect. So what we did over here is, in case if we want to change the particular size or the type of account ID or balance, I just need to change it at one place now. Rest, all of my code doesn't need to change at all. If you see in my step 1, in order to make one change of that particular account ID and balance, I had to change these U32s everywhere. So we have come one step closer by just changing it over here. The moment I do this to be U16, this becomes a U16 for all of the places where account ID and balance are being referred. Okay, so I don't have to change it anywhere else. So let's actually keep it U32 itself in order to keep it consistent. Okay, and let me actually do mod step 2. Why am I writing it down below? I don't know, not a good way. Let me actually write it before the main, sorry. Okay. Ideally it should be at the top, but I don't want to go scroll up and down again and again. And over here, I'll just copy this. Okay, and we'll rename this to test step 2. Now this test step 2 ideally is being called from another module, which is step 2, balance module new. Now you see, I don't have to change anything anywhere. My test is ready, my code is ready, because I made just one change of providing this as account ID and balance, which is of U32 type. If I make these changes over here, it would automatically reflect into my test as well. So let's see whether I'm just speaking a lot or does it even make sense. Perfect. So when you checked that this particular account ID, now we are not calling it a U32 type. Although you could see that the compiler is actually saying that this is a U32 type, because it is originally referring to that account ID, which is a U32 type. But for us, it is an account ID, which is a U32 type. So from account ID to account ID balance, okay, which is the exact amount. So this you can say as one step closer to your writing a generic by just writing types over here. So yeah, Now, before we go on to the main, like the next part, any questions for these type things which we have done?
So Varun, for account, this is Vijay. So for account ID, like you created one account ID. So for to and from, we will be needing two different like type. Okay, it's going to act as a type. Okay, sorry.
Exactly. So we created a type. Now we just So
I got confused with the variable name actually.
Yeah, I understand. So okay, so if that is answered, so fine.
Yeah.
I wanted to showcase a couple of other things as well, but looks like we are running out of time, so I'll keep it short for now, and we'll just try to focus on the generics type then. Let's actually jump to the most exciting part now, like creating, utilizing generics. So what I'll do is I'll actually copy this thing again so that we are not repeating the code again and again. And over here, we'll just paste it as maybe step 3, we can call it. Okay. Okay, let me add this step. Okay, this will get complex. Trust me, if you guys don't come from Rust background and don't understand the concept of generics, so this might get slightly complex, but I'll try to go step by step so that everybody is able to understand at a pretty decent pace. Okay. So I remove these types, right? Perfect. Now I'm saying this this particular balance is supposed to be of a particular types, account ID and balance. Now, when you're trying to write a particular struct, okay. So over here, you can say, by the way, it is on you, the way you write the name of a generic. Usually Rust says that the name of a generic or a particular type could be T because it is associated to type, then TU, and then people also write E. So I'm actually keeping it easy for you guys to make it with the name itself. Okay. So my balance module that we have is of account ID and balance type, which you are passing it to your hash map as account ID and balance. Now you can see that it is throwing an error over here. So how is Rust helping you? That it is missing generics for struct, step 3 balance module, expected 2 generic arguments. Now, since you have included these specific types for your struct, obviously the way you are actually defining your struct, you need to implement that as well. So what we are going to do is we are going to say that this takes account ID and balance, and my balance module, which is again a generic type, has account ID and balance. Okay, perfect. So for this implementation, it is fine, but it will throw errors at a lot of points because we haven't reached there yet. Okay. So if you are trying to just instantiate a particular self type for that struct, with that, it won't throw any error because you're not utilizing the type yet. And when you're trying to set the balance, it is still of the value. But the moment you do some operations with that particular type that you have implemented, it will throw some errors. Now, I know why these errors are, but even your Rust compiler will help you here. So we will just read it together. Okay. The method get exists for struct hashmap account ID balance, but its trait bounds were not satisfied. Now, what does it mean by trait bounds were not satisfied? What you're trying to do is you are saying that my balance is of type hashmap. Okay. Hashmap ideally generates a hash of your key value pair. All right. So when you're trying to get that particular value, your account ID, which is a generic type, is not implementing a hash type, a hash trait, or an equal trait. So let me actually do this. Should I? Okay. So from our standard library, we used, so this is compare whether this, okay, this particular type could be compared as an equal value to the another implementation of this type itself. Like wherever the account ID is used, could these be compared together? Are these of the same size, U32s, U64 or U16s? So we are supposed to bound that particular type with an equal, okay? So for hashing the hash map, we are using this hash. So let's say my account ID is actually trait bound with these two traits plus hash. Okay. So the moment you do insert, so see the error over here for your set balance gone, for your get gone, because over here you are trying to play only with the account ID. So the trait bounds are satisfied over here, right? Now for your balance, okay, now we are saying that this is supposed to be of 0. So probably I'll have to get 0. Okay, now, oh, something helped us. So earlier, if you remember, like I included a particular package known as num 0.4.0. Now that is the time to utilize that dependency, which is coming from other project and utilizing that particular project into our project, right? So how are we going to utilize that? So use num. So under traits, whatever type of traits it has various traits. I just want a 0, okay? Now this 0 already obviously has a function which would be 0 in order to match to that particular type. And the moment I did this 0, and over here when we do and, so I'll have to tell my type that, okay, I'm trying to call this particular type, referencing to this particular type, and call the 0 function. So whatever the value is, give me that value. So you see, I passed the 0 value rather than directly a reference to a type. So even this is the same. What we are doing is and 0. So your 0 earlier was and U32 type. Over here, we are saying that my 0 is actually of this type, the balance type, which is actually utilizing this trait, which is 0. Okay. So let me actually add checked add and checked sub as well, because that is what we are using in our transfer functions. And okay. Okay, actually, let me include that checked add for my, it should be part of the traits though. This is just in order to make the code look better rather than just doing it again and again. I'll just remove this. This is not required. So because use num trait 0, check that, check sub. And so all of these traits are satisfied. Now mismatch types for your balance. Obviously, because we are doing it at multiple points. So over here, consider borrowing this. So now it is saying that check sub should be borrowed over here because you are trying to implement various traits on this. And now why are you throwing an error here? Okay, see, again, as I said, Rust compiler is one of the greatest gifts for developers like us who sometimes forget to include a particular trait. So what happens is when you're trying to get the balance, so it is trying to tell you that it is, you haven't implemented the copy trait. Copy is a very important trait in order to keep in mind for the types, in order to match that the size won't change, and you can actually copy this particular value or type byte by byte. If it is a fixed type, so copy trait ideally works on your U32s, U64, U128 types. It doesn't work for a string type because your string is ideally implemented on a heap because it is not a fixed size. So you are not able to copy the value in your string byte by byte. On the other hand, for your primitive types, which are of U32, U64, you can actually, the compiler knows that there is a specific fixed size, so I can keep copying it byte by byte. So that's the reason it is saying that for this, you need to provide me a copy trait. So, okay, perfect. So this is the way we have converted it into a generic type by implementing all of this. Now, our job is not done yet. So let me actually copy this again in order to test it. So test step 3, and from step 3, I'm calling balances module new. It should throw some errors. Okay, where is it? Not throwing any errors. Why, dude? I haven't given you the account ID. Okay, let me give the account ID type, which is, sorry. Test it. Perfect. So this is what generics is all about. So see, you can assume this particular function as your runtime, where you're testing. Okay, inside your code, you didn't even bother to mention that primitively what specific type does it take. If your type is actually satisfying these bounds, so make it a generic type. So if I change my particular type over here in the runtime, over here, if I make it use 16, if the trait bounds are satisfied, then you just change it at one position, and this becomes your generic type across the entire struct and the implementation of all of the functions, which is utilizing that particular type. So that's how you basically make your program more generic to any specific type given to it. So earlier, if you remember in step 2, we provided this account ID and balance over here, directly hard coding it and telling that this account ID is U32, this balance is U32. But on the other hand, what we have done over here, we created this account ID and balance without even passing that my account ID is going to be of this type before the compile time, and my balance is also going to be of this type. On the other hand, I'm actually providing that value in my runtime over here in the function, the main function. So this is how ideally, in a simple way, generics work. Now I actually I'm open to questions, so we can take the questions in case if you guys have.
Varun, can you go to that step 3 file once again?
Sure.
Yeah. Yes, I want to understand this. In the implementation, you have written this account ID eq plus hash, and this the whole line. Okay. Yeah. Plus the header you brought in the STD collection hash map. So I just want to understand this again. I mean,
sure. So this STD collections hash map, this we are saying that I want to utilize the concept of this struct, which is coming from this particular module, which is part of this library. Okay. Similarly, either you write your own. So for example, in Python, if you have worked in Python, so you have your own types. Now there are because you are not going to mention those during the runtime. So what we do over here is during the runtime itself, it will just check that whatever type is implementing this trait, whether could this, okay, let me actually go to this. So can I take this U16 value, whichever is I'm getting from the runtime, okay? If this particular value could be equivalent to the value in order to add, subtract, or hash that particular value, which is being bounded to account ID. Okay, whether these two values actually match each other or not. Two values as in whichever function is utilizing account ID. So for example, in order to take the transfer, so from account ID to account ID, now this account ID is also U32 type, this account ID is also U32 type, but you are mentioning it over in your runtime over here. Even if it is a U16 type, whether can you subtract, can you add, are these values equal onto the stack or not? If they are equal, then apply these bounds and make this as a type which could be given during the runtime. It works for me, whether my function implements this or not. So this 0, this checked add, this checked sub, this copy, these are all onto the specific primitive types, the bounds have been written on. So I'm utilizing those traits. So I'm making that, so this is known as making it generic enough, the function that could take any particular type coming from your runtime. This, I'll be very, very honest. Understanding generics in the first time could be really complex, that what is it exactly doing, unless and until we don't end up working on traits, that why are traits required? So as I said, basically traits define a behavior or a type, the kind of type that you want for your traits to be implemented on. So this is kind of a trait that you're trying to bound it with your type. Did I confuse you, or did you get some clarity?
Yeah, I got some clarity. So I just want, I have a doubt on like, when you say value, so value means it's a type. We are trying to understand that account ID is of U32 type, and the final value which account ID is summing up after having this balance 0 and check add and check serve is also compatible with the U32 size or something.
Exactly. So is it compatible enough or not with the types that he has given me in the runtime?
Okay.
That's it. Purely, that is perfectly the way you have put it up. Okay. I'll use that line.
Thanks.
Cool. So do we? I believe it is already 9. So I'm happy. I'm glad that we were able to cover at least some portion of generics. And then probably in the next session, we'll try to cover in depth the traits, because traits would take some time for me to walk you through that. So we can wrap the session on the concepts of some intermediately advanced concepts of Rust, and ready to take the questions. And I'll upload all of this code onto the GitHub. We'll share the repo link with all of you so that you guys can play around with it and definitely ask as many questions as possible. You can raise the PR, you can come up with your own solutions. If somebody is actually very inclined and interested, I would be more than happy if you are able to implement a trait which utilizes the generic types or these specific types and utilize that trait for this balances module. I would be more than happy to go through that and answer any questions if required. Cool. So I believe have the developers left me already, or there are a few?
Well, quite a few, I think, through your session, everybody just stayed through. There are 54, there are 52 right now, 53 in fact. So thank you very much, everybody who has stuck till the very end. And Vijay, especially to you, thank you for asking your questions candidly, because you posing your questions gives a lot of other people an opportunity to clarify their doubts as well. Am I right, guys?
I would say yes.
So yeah, but definitely you've been a great sport. Thank you so much. And it was definitely helpful for a bunch of other people. I'm pretty confident of that.